clay hills, where the scent of longleaf floated pine reach up on past that Georgia line. Stroll through Tallahassee town or southern Appalachia bound. Take the local routes and journey down the roads we call our home. Take the local routes and journey down the roads we call our home.
Welcome to Local Roots. I'm Suzanne Smith with WFSU Public Media. And today we begin the 5th season of this program right on the edge of Tallahassee's Cascades Park at the Smokey Hollow commemoration. The words growth, progress, and development are phrases we hear a lot these days. WFSU's Gina Jordan explores this topic with a tale about a neighborhood that once lived here 70 years ago. And it's a history that keeps repeating itself.
An old neighborhood is demolished to extend a new road in Tallahassee called FAMU Way. The improvements in a poor area near the city's historically black university are what some call progress and others call gentrification. It's a move we've seen before.
We don't take enough emphasis and put it on history, to take lessons so we can learn from what happened. And in the case of Smokey Hollow, the idea that a whole set of people were moved. Displacement really has a hardship on people. We don't understand the factors that involve, particularly when it comes to emotional trauma, when it comes to loss of spirit and loss of family and loss of support systems.
Cascades Park sits on a 24-acre parcel in the shadow of Florida's capital. Families are drawn to its ponds, imagination fountain, and pet-friendly walking trails. Long before Cascades Park was envisioned, a neighborhood known as Smokey Hollow sat in this spot. Born in the 1890s, it was home to hundreds of African-American families.
It was a community that had churches, businesses, and so you go back into the time, 50s, 60s, I'm in the 60s. Segregation was prominent. Blacks couldn't live where they so desired. So it was one of the places where blacks lived.
By the late 1950s and early 60s, the structures in Smokey Hollow were aged and many looked ramshackle. A 2-lane highway was widened into a broad boulevard, Appalachia Parkway, with a majestic view leading right up to the Capitol building and cutting right through Smokey Hollow.
A majestic sight indeed. Florida's Capitol building, with its tall white columns and glistening dome, has dominated the entire Tallahassee landscape since 1839.
To white citizens working or living up on the hill, the neighborhood looked like a slum. Urban renewal was the catchphrase of the day, according to local newspaper accounts. A possible expansion of the Capitol complex percolated with a grand vision of a campus-like array around the Capitol building. A referendum was held, and the state exercised eminent domain. Smokey Hollow residents were told to leave.
It's important for people to recognize the impact of what happens to a lot of black communities. They don't see it because it's not happening in their community. So as a result, you don't realize how many people may have lived in one of these small houses.
Smokey Hollow went under the bulldozer, ostensibly to make room for a much-needed growing capital infrastructure. One government office was built in the area. The Department of Transportation building broke ground in November of 1964. Time went on, and not a lot happened with the remaining land. The view approaching Florida's capital was magnificent, but the community of Smokey Hollow was gone.
So when part of my family left here, we scattered. Some went to the Bond community, some went to the South Side area, some went to North Side in the Frenchtown community, Springfield area. And so naturally that separation caused, us to not be together as often. I still see a lot of that happening now, with families who've been displaced. Many families are homeless. That's what I think led to a lot of the homelessness from the movement of the people from this area.
Public housing projects started springing up around town as an answer to urban renewal. Smokey Hollow residents dispersed and moved to areas they could afford and were allowed. Many moved south of the railroad tracks to an area known as South City. Others went to Frenchtown, but gentrification began there in the 1990s.
We watched it in DC, we watched it in Harlem, we've watched it all over the nation, and we're watching it in Tallahassee, Florida. We're watching communities that have been legacy communities, African American communities, and there's a knowledge that where African Americans dwell are some of the most valuable places in a community, because we tend to be in the central of the city where accessibility is maximized because it's a need.
As FAMU Way is extended, a South City housing project is being renovated and expanded to double the living space. The area sits about 2 miles south of the old Smokey Hollow.
So early on, we were talking about urban renewal and eminent domain, and where the government could come in and take the property if they wanted to. Now we're talking about gentrification and redlining and all these things, but they're all related to certain systems, housing, wealth, income, things of that sort.
Many of them have been in generational cycles of survivalism that just have not been broken. And so those are things that as a community we have to speak to and we have to own. We can't just sweep it under a rug and say, no, that's not the case. No, it is the case. The most vulnerable citizens are negatively impacted by eminent domain for the most part. So we have to be at the table when these decisions are made.
50 years after the demise of Smokey Hollow, the city of Tallahassee completed construction of Cascades Park, a beautiful public space at the site of the old neighborhood. And the Smokey Hollow commemoration stands as a reminder that things have changed, but maybe there's more work to do.
So when I think about what lessons that I've learned, I know that it's important for us to keep up on what's going on in our legislature, to keep up with what's going on in our local community government, to be a voice, which the people in Smokey Hollow didn't have much of a voice. The ones who were on my side of the track, we didn't have enough to say about legislature or new things that are coming to take down a shanty family's home.
In addition to the creation of a symbolic memorial structure, as well as the preservation and display of a community gathering spot, the old barbershop, a written collection of oral histories about the Smokey Hollow community was recently published. Efforts continue to preserve the memories of Smokey Hollow, and the cycle of urban renewal continues. For WFSU Public Media, I'm Gina Jordan.
WFSU-FM's newsroom and the WFSU Television Production Department teamed up for that story, which is brought to us in part by a grant from a new PBS program called Retro Report. You can see it this October right here on WFSU. Here's a look at what that program is all about.
I'm Celeste Headley.
And I'm Masoud Olufani. This is Retro Report on PBS.
Well, Retro Report is a new program that really seeks to bring perspective to today by connecting it to the past.
So we take the current headline, we walk it back to where the roots began, and then we walk you all the way forward. And by the time you get back again, I bet you're going to have a different view of what's really going on.
We go back to those historical moments that helped to shape where we are today. Colin Kaepernick, the moment where he knelt, and how we were able to tie that moment where those black athletes in the 1968 Olympics raised their fists with the black gloves and put it in context.
Our story on the addiction to social media and how that all began with experiments on pigeons decades and decades ago.
I host a short segment at the end called Now It All Makes Sense. It's kind of like Schoolhouse Rock for grown-ups. It's time to finally give America's intrepid conspiracy theorists the credit they richly deserve.
Andy's role is to provide a little light touch. He's humor, so.
The stories I'm doing are a little lighter and a little more ridiculous.
If journalism is the first draft of history, then Retro Report is maybe the second or the third draft. You learn incredible lessons about where we are by looking back and connecting things to today.
A historic neighborhood is more than just its man-made structures. Living hundreds of years, live oaks have witnessed the birth and destruction of many neighborhoods in this city. But as WFSU's Rob Diaz de Villegas shows us in this next story, when these long-lived trees are threatened, Tallahasseans respond.
So why does Tallahassee have a love affair with live oaks? I think most people, when they're in the presence of a huge live oak, there's a certain spiritual quality to it that you just can't help but feel. They are magnificent and enormous living things. It's like confronting a blue whale, except you get to do it on land.
Not everyone at this meeting was here for oaks, but about 60 citizens spoke to try and convince the Blueprint Intergovernmental Agency to not tear down this tree as they prepare to reroute FAMU Way.
I'm fighting for something. I ain't fighting by myself. Look at all these white people, black people, ordinary people. Y'all give y'all something here. This is not just about saving a tree. This is about social justice.
We didn't vote to make a concrete jungle out of the city of Tallahassee. We did not vote to destroy century-old oak trees.
I just don't understand why they need to cut down all these beautiful oak trees and destroy these neighborhoods.
Tallahassee has a long history of fighting for and trying to preserve its live oaks. Today, we will explore Tallahasseans' love for this iconic southern tree.
If you look at pictures of North Monroe at the turn of the century, it's a canopy road. But as cars came on, they started cutting the trees, and so that was the nexus of the Live Oak Trail, which was started by one woman in town. She was married to a state official, and she organized Ladies with the Garden Club to recognize the live oaks in town and developed a driving trail to visit some of the best ones in town. The May Oak was a famous oak down at the eastern end of the chain of parks, and it had an incredible spread. It became a really important spot for local gatherings, including a May party every year when a lot of the young ladies of the prominent families in town would dress up and they would all gather underneath it. But we still mark the stump of the May Oak in Tallahassee all these years later. And so, at least in the last 100 or so years, it was one lady and her organized lady friends who really called attention to the importance of our big oaks here in Tallahassee.
A modern Tallahassee live oak trail would likely include this tree.
Let's measure this tree, Sam.
Okay.
Here we get a lesson in the longevity of the species.
Yeah, I think we'll average it right here.
Okay. Got it?
Yep.
It's 84.7. So basically, a 6-foot diameter live oak is around 150 years old. And so we said, how old was this one, Sam, again?
175.
Yeah, we figured this one here is 7 feet in diameter, ballpark figure 175. And you know, the idea that we're going to get without counting the rings, and we're not cutting this tree down to count the rings, you're not going to get that specific within a year or half a year or something like that.
But it's really difficult to know the ages of live oaks. When they're in a place that they like and people are not abusing them, they can get very big very fast.
They do grow faster when they're young, like we do. We grow up as juveniles, we hit a plateau, and then we begin maybe to expand, but we don't get any taller. Well, that's what live oaks do. They get up to about 60 feet tall, and then they begin to bulk up, and that's a slow process.
On average, in a community environment, they're 150 to 200 years old is about the lifespan of a live oak. It's still considered a long-lived tree, but I think it's probably shorter-lived than people think.
The Benton oak is one of 3 large oaks in the path of a soon-to-be rerouted FAMU Way. But is it 500 years old?
Those trees, I would say, are probably just in the range of 100 to 125 years at most. They're not this size at all, so they're much younger. They're not 500 years.
That's still a pretty old tree.
So when this tree started growing, it was probably around the turn of the 20th century. Tallahassee was probably a village of about 3,000 or 4,000 people. This would have been the edge of town. We would have been surrounded by agricultural fields.
The Benton oak is in the Boynton Still neighborhood, named after an old turpentine distillery. Down the street, we visited 2 oaks that have since been torn down.
The 2 trees that we're standing next to here used to be the shade trees for Shingles Chicken House, which was opened in the late 60s by African-American entrepreneur named Alvin Shingles. And he repurposed one of the old distillery buildings and made it into a restaurant. And he made extremely delicious fried chicken. And people from all over Tallahassee, both white and black, would come to the restaurant, and it was a real anchor for the neighborhood until it closed about 10 years ago. Now that the houses are gone, you know, these trees are the things that really bear witness for the fact that there was a neighborhood here. They're a cultural artifact, even though they're a natural resource.
It takes a permit to chop down most trees in Tallahassee, but only a few trees have absolute protection. These are state champion and exceptional specimen trees.
This tree, as big as it is, does not meet the official definition of a patriarch oak in our tree ordinance here in Tallahassee. It's not considered big enough.
That's kind of a tree that's above and beyond what you would expect as far as health, size, and just general value to the site.
The definition leaves some room for interpretation. What makes a tree historically significant, or of greater value than other trees of the species? In the end, Mindy found structural defects in the Benton oak, clearing the way for it to be demolished. While the city code did not protect the Boynton still trees, the city is re-examining its future tree preservation goals.
We started the process of developing an urban forest master plan. Our urban forest master plan does help us with recommendations of what we can do moving forward to make sure we're meeting those goals of canopy quality improvement and canopy coverage maintenance. We're going to be looking at development code to make sure that the requirements for tree preservation and planting are in line with those goals. You know, so it's long term, but this is a long-lived resource and it's a vast resource, so change will take time.
Ultimately, protesters could not save the Benton oak. But odds are, next time a mature live oak is threatened in Tallahassee, someone will speak up for it.
Back in the 90s, as I recall, the city of Tallahassee used live oaks on a lot of its promotional materials. And indeed, they are emblematic of the city. People can't imagine Tallahassee being Tallahassee without these big live oaks. But we keep cutting them down.
For WFSU, I'm Rob Diaz de Villegas.
As always, you can dive deeper into the story on WFSU's Ecology blog. Coming soon, the blog will also be the place where you can find part 2 of the story. It will focus on the ecological roles of live oaks in an urban environment.
Up next, take a look at this new video from our American Graduate Getting to Work series. WFSU's Mike Plummer focuses on certifications for high-demand healthcare specialization. Cue the music.
Healthcare and the fact that Florida is a state known for retirement and it's only going to continue to grow. This is locally, statewide, and nationally. There is a job for you in healthcare.
When our students, sometimes before they have completed our program, like within that last semester of education, they've already been sought after by people in the local community, employers in the local community to come to work for them. And that's with all of my programs.
We realize that ultimately, whether our students are connecting with FSU or FAMU or anywhere else after TCC, the intent is to gain employment. We recognize also that some would like to do that sooner. As a result, TCC to Work and those programs that put individuals to work is where we emphasize and make sure that there are opportunities and that we're continuing to grow them.
Most of our certificate programs are stackable, which means that a student can take one certificate and then another certificate in that same program of study, and it improves their employability. Generally, it takes about 1 to 2 semesters to complete one of those certificate programs, and then they're ready to become employed.
I've done 2 programs through them. I've done a Central Sterile program, which I earned a certification in Central Sterile and Processing, and then I have also been a certified surgical technologist. I always tell people this is the hardest thing to do, is explain what my job is without making it sound boring. But it's so much more than, you know, just passing instruments. Like, we have to know every single one of those instruments that he's asking for. So I think throughout the program we learned about 500 instruments. That doesn't even brush the surface from what I've learned here. And so it's a lot more goes into it. We have to know a lot more things. We basically get the room ready. We make sure we have all the supplies and equipment, and basically during the case, your job is to stay one step ahead of the surgeon. So you should think like a surgeon and hand him what he needs, not what he asks for. So we have to know the procedure inside and out.
I think now that more of the specialized trainings are becoming acceptable, our community has stated that they need employees, and they need them now, not 4 years from now. They need them now. So any certificate programs that we have available to our students, we're also helping our community.
So our job is to make sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing, that we're opening stuff correctly, and that everybody is maintaining sterile technique.
Individuals need the skills that they need to gain employment, while employers are looking for not just this variety, they really want it focused and channeled in on a person being able to do those and perform those jobs and duties that they need day one.
A lot of people that I know use this as a stepping stone for a PA school. We have a couple of people who've gone through programs from the surgical technologist program who have done this for a couple years and then applied and went to a PA program.
When you look at Florida's labor market information, the top 10 that are showing growth for our area, and then looking across the state of Florida as well, 5 are in healthcare. 5 are in healthcare, so really no wrong door, but yes, all of those opportunities are ones that you can do 2 years or less right here at TCC, or even when you think about the EMT, when you think about even it falls over on alignment with some of our I think about like with our firefighter programs that tie into the EMT component of it. There's just a host of opportunities, and we're telling that story that over 160,000 people have chosen just that route. Yeah.
I just like that it's something new every day, and with technology comes new things, and I just really enjoy what I'm doing.
American Graduate Getting to Work is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Over the summer, WFSU's American Graduate Program and WFSU's Education Department came together to help a Tallahassee Future Leaders Academy intern learn more about the workforce. Here's what Sydney did on her summer internship.
My name is Sydney Mines, and I'm a TFLA intern working with WFSU. My favorite experience was getting to go and work with the kids. One week we went to Chattahoochee and worked with the kids at an elementary school, and I absolutely loved it. I got to work one of the stations, and then the Oswald camp I thought was really fun, and the kids really loved it.
So when Sydney got on board, we were all happy, and she was really quiet. But honestly, ever since she started to spend more time with us, she's gotten more and more open and entertaining, and she's got a great sense of humor, which we've really enjoyed having around.
So for the Oswald camp, I had to make boxes for all the children, and it would be like this special little cubby that they can put their belongings in every day. Most of the kids enjoyed it and loved their boxes, and were so excited to show it to their parents, so I felt really, really great about it. I am horrible at waking up, so I have to set an alarm, and I think that me knowing that I have a job to go to every morning helps me wake up, get ready, and actually be able to go out. I don't usually conversate with people around me if I don't really have to, but this, I'm more inclined to communicate with people and ask them questions and get to know people better. I've learned a lot about teamwork because they involve me with everything that goes on, meetings or just casual talk or anything that they need. And I really enjoy that. I really appreciate that.
American Graduate Getting to Work is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Learn more about our American Graduate Initiative, see more stories, and connect to job resources by heading to our website, gradstowork.wfsu.org.
In addition to a new season of Local Roots, our website has a new look as well. You'll want to take a look. In addition to stories you see on this program, we also have a lot of other items to offer.
We'll be sharing some of the best feature stories from WFSU FM, special articles and photos, and a community events calendar. Plus, we'll be adding more all the time. Go to our website to explore our local roots.
We are currently working on a special episode of Local Roots for next month. You'll be able to see it on October 10th, the anniversary of Hurricane Michael.
In that episode, we'll be exploring areas hit by the storm and take a look at what life is like 1 year later. WFSU FM's Perspectives program that day will also be live from Mexico Beach, Florida, the place where Hurricane Michael made landfall.
That's it for this episode of Local Roots. I'm Suzanne Smith at Cascades Park in Tallahassee. Remember, you can check out these stories and more on our new website, wfsu.org/localroots. And while you're online, follow us on Facebook and Instagram. For everyone at WFSU Public Media, have a great week, everyone. Bye.
Magnolia trees greet the southern breeze in the land where rivers wind. Seeds that spring up from the past leave us treasures yet to find. Where our children play along the land our fathers build with honest hands. Take a moment now and look around the paradise we have found. Take the Lord